Superhumans. Like something almost straight out of a comic book, superhumans, or perhaps you could even call them mutants if you were so inclined, are indeed a reality in this world. Extraordinary men and women have existed for ages, and many of them have indeed possessed superhuman abilities. Perhaps we don't have any supermen flying around plucking falling space shuttles out of the air, but there are plenty of documented cases of people with extraordinary gifts accomplishing feats that you or I would have absolutely no chance of doing. One of my favorite cases is that which is also perhaps surrounded by the most mystery as well. Perhaps that's what makes him so interesting. His name is Grigori Rasputin, and I have no doubt that many of you listening here have heard his name. Rasputin, shall we say, is a very interesting character. Essentially just a Siberian peasant, he was born in January 21st of 1869. Rasputin later just up and left home, abandoning his wife and kids to become a wandering holy man and a mystic after claiming to have had a vision of the Virgin Mary. But this is where the story just begins to get interesting. At some point in his wanderings, Rasputin was introduced to the Tsar of Russia, Nicholas, and his wife Alexandra. Unfortunately for them, they had a young son, Alexei, who suffered from a disease called hemophilia, which was generally considered a death sentence back in the early 1900s. In case you're unfamiliar with hemophilia, it's essentially a disease which is often passed on by inbreeding between royal families, which would cause excessive bleeding due to the body not being able to form appropriate blood clots. Due to his status as a holy man, Rasputin was eventually at some point invited by the Tsar and his wife to come and help their son who was suffering terribly due to the hemophilia, and he was actually called to do so on numerous occasions over the years, which he successfully did each and every time he was called. Some people speculate that Rasputin employed hypnosis to heal the boy. However, that fails to take into account one particular time when he essentially healed him by telegram. One other possible explanation is the fact that he stopped the doctors from administering aspirin, which is a blood thinner and would have actually been doing far more harm than good to a hemophiliac. But regardless of that, it doesn't change the fact that the Tsar's son had been seemingly miraculously pulled back from the brink of death on multiple occasions. And it's still perhaps a stretch to say that simply because the doctors stopped administering aspirin, that the boy would have made such a remarkable recovery. However, it's not his superhuman healing ability which gets him mentioned in this video, but rather the nature of his death. Rasputin, as we said earlier, was a very interesting character, and he in fact found himself the subject of almost weekly stories in the local newspaper there due to, shall we say, unusual and promiscuous behavior? Anyways, due to a variety of reasons, many of the nobles wanted to see him dead. So eventually, a few of them hatched a plan, where one of the princes invited Rasputin to his home, where a feast of cyanide-laced pastries had been prepared. Rasputin accepted, and once he arrived, began chowing down on the cyanide, which should have killed him within minutes. However, perhaps due to some amazing healing ability, or superhuman fortitude, or regeneration, or I don't know, Rasputin complained of nothing more than a mild stomachache after having eaten the pastries. Needless to say, at this point, the assassination conspirators began to worry a little bit, and after some time took the opportunity to shoot Rasputin in the back as he was examining a crucifix. The assassins then left, and later one of them returned to check on the body, and as he bent down, Rasputin, according to some sources, opened his eyes and told the prince, "You have been a bad boy." At this point, a struggle ensued, and Rasputin ran from the home, screaming that he was going to tattletale on the assassins to the Tsarina. However, he never made it that far. The assassins gave chase and shot Rasputin several more times as he fled, including once or twice in the head, and then they proceeded to beat Rasputin, kicking him and perhaps even pulverizing him with a dumbbell, before tying him up and dumping him into a frozen river. Now, for the most part, everything before this point is pretty much agreed upon, although there is some controversy over whether Rasputin actually ate the cyanide pastries or not, but where the story really ends up taking a different turn is that there are some reports that they found Rasputin's body. It appeared that he had actually managed to begin untying himself and at least freed one hand, but that he had ended up drowning in the river, with his lungs being found full of water. Unfortunately, this all occurred shortly before the fall of the Tsarins arena, probably due in no small part to the Tsarina using Rasputin as a magic 8-ball anytime she had a question. And with the rise of the Soviets to power, many of the official reports and findings on Rasputin were classified and destroyed. I personally don't believe the last part about the cause of Rasputin's death being drowning, as there are photographs of Rasputin after he was found that show wounds. I don't believe he could have possibly survived. But nevertheless, if he did have some miraculous ability to heal others, be it through God or some unexplained reason, then it stands to reason that he could have potentially done the same for himself. Whether or not the stories surrounding Rasputin's death are true or not, Rasputin himself was definitely very interesting, and the myth of his demise only makes him more so. Either way, he's definitely worth learning a little more about should you be so inclined. We still have plenty more interesting historical superhumans to go over, such as Samson, who supposedly had real-life strength rivaling that of Captain America, or perhaps even greater, and a German prodigy who supposedly could speak fluent German by the time he was 8 weeks old, and supposedly read the entire Bible in Latin by the time he was 3. But those stories will be for another time, and I hope you've enjoyed this video. If so, I would appreciate it if you would like and subscribe if you haven't already, and share it with your friends, as your likes are what keep this going. Thank you very much.